So how to teach a teaching, lots of things we need to teach. There are various ways. We'll talk about that. And then presenting a presentation, which is pretty much part of giving a teaching no matter what you do. But and there are lots of ways to do it. I'm only really going to discuss PowerPoint in depth. So some little notes on where we're going. I'm going to start out with some notes in general on teaching. And believe me, keeping that down to 3 or 4 slides wasn't easy, but I'm doing it. Preparing a new presentation, where to start. And then when you're ready for it, I'll be talking about PowerPoint. And again, so, one method of presenting, but there are many others we may talk about. So first thing on teaching, my favorite piece of advice on teaching is, as you can see, shut the fuck up. The more you can be quiet and let your students answer questions, come up with ideas, try things, the more they learn. You already know it. You don't need to talk about it. You just need to help them to learn. And why isn't it? There we go. So this is don't say any more than you need to in order to convey the information that you want to convey. And there it is. Okay. So again, part of shut the fuck up. Say it and then shut up. And if at all possible, at any times, ask questions rather than just tell people stuff or give them the answer to a question. And of course, you guide them. They are not always going to get the right answer. You've got to say things like, think more like this. That's a good idea. That sort of thing. And again, this is what I love to do when I'm in person, and this hybrid world, it's a little more difficult. So that's all about the Socratic method. Most of us have heard. Just keep asking questions of the person and summarizing what they say and then leading them on to the next point so that they're discovering things for themselves. And that makes people learn things better. It makes them retain things better because their brain did the work. And as I said earlier, this is difficult sometimes with our world of hybrid presentations. Thankfully, we do have the raise hand function. Oops, just so one of the things that's frequently not appreciated is that you do not have to teach using only listening and talking, listening and looking at things. There are all sorts of, there are 3 other senses, and all of them have effectiveness in helping you to retain things, recall things. This right here is actually a graph of how well they work. If you just see something, retention's kind of If you hear it, it's a little better. If you can feel something, and any of you know, if you've ever felt anything, you've done electronics and you've actually worked with the circuits, biology, and you've actually worked with the organisms, works better. Smell, if you can get that in, it works amazingly well. And the last one is taste. And if any of you have tasted something you have not tasted in a whole bunch of years, you've probably experienced some sort of a flashback to that taste. And then I said, smell and taste are the best, but then if you can engage them together, get even more. So if somebody can look at something, hear you talk about it, feel it, smell it, ooh, it smells really yummy, eat it, wow, it's sweet and sugary. If they can do all that, they're probably going to remember what you've taught them. I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of people, when they learn to cook, usually retain a fair bit of the skill over time because they did all of these when they were learning. So now this is something where I am going to take a little step out of my presentation, find out where the dickens my thing is. And what I'd like to do at this point is I'd like those of you to just raise hands raise hands and give me some ideas about ways that a person can teach or ways you've seen people teach. Anybody? You're listening to me right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I sure can.
Well, I think what works good for me is sitting down and having a person show me something one-on-one, personally. Yeah, demonstrations.
Pardon me for my absolutely terrible demon.
But it really helps if I'm actually, they may be showing me, but then I should replicate that task, what they showed me myself, with my own hands and my own body to make the connection happen.
Yeah, okay, one-on-one demonstration. Others? Give you simple ones. I'm doing it right now. Somebody talking and I'm not hearing them?
Yeah, Jenny is talking. I'm going to try and paraphrase what you're saying. Or you can speak louder, and maybe it'll connect to this, or you will. Can you hear that, Mike?
No, I think you'll have to paraphrase for me.
Okay, Jenny is saying it depends on what it is that's being taught. For example, she's studied horsemanship. That's a very hands-on thing. It's not something you can get necessarily out of a book. Versus philosophy. Yeah, versus learning philosophy is something you're going to read or hear a lecture on and internalize intellectually. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, what happened there? Should be in white. Stuck it here. No, I think. Okay, listen. Listen can be a lot of different things. So, badly. There. Lecture.
How about like writing out a flow chart or taking a process that you think that you're maybe designing or you think you learned from, and you're laying a flow chart out for yourself and looking for logical flaws. I don't know if that's a learning thing or not. It seems I've done like things that in the past before, making a plan for something, and then I don't know, maybe I'm getting off topic.
No, not at all.
Yeah, outlining things.
I think I already put diagram, but you did mention that's supposed to say shortfalls. A trouble for those of you who don't know is I'm actually very shaky right now. It's something that sadly happens to me these days. So pardon there, shortfalls, analyzing shortfalls. Okay, I did put lecture up there. Give me one where your sense of smell comes in.
Sense of smell for learning. I don't know.
Yeah, but what?
If I don't bathe, people will hang around me.
Yeah, there.
Then I would learn that maybe bathing is a good thing.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm just making an example of if I don't bathe, if I don't take a shower often enough, maybe people won't want to hang around me very much. And so I would learn that that's a social skill that I should probably pay attention
Put some work on. Yeah, there we go.
Or if you smell burning food, you're cooking your food too much, and you learn that the sense of burned food is not a good thing. I don't know, maybe I'm being ridiculous. I'm just trying to throw
stuff. How about learning about cooking using smell? Even if it's not burning, you smell it and it's like, that does not smell like marinara sauce. I did something wrong.
Or I put too much garlic in. So.
Yes, exactly. And taste will do that too. Okay. Odd one for smell that many people may not realize. Just writing it out. Chemist weekly.
Yeah, that's stuff.
That's okay. We haven't studied it. But, and again, here I'm starting to put down things you can teach with it, but that's a place where smell comes in, and taste can come in. There are some chemicals that you will taste differently. A good example is the different sugars. Glucose does not taste like fructose or maltose. So you can get used to that. All right, so that's just a few different things, and I'm going to pop this back into here. Thing is, a lot of times we don't think about all the different ways that there are to teach, and so we just think, I'm just going to tell them. Yeah, maybe show them a PowerPoint, that's it. But if you think about it, you can use all sorts of different ways to teach things, and the more of them you use, just like I showed earlier, more of them you use, the better the student's learning and retention becomes.
So I've got a question, Mike.
Yes.
Can I ask it at this point?
Please. Yeah,
so
please.
On smell and taste, I know that smell is a big memory re-enabler for me. Like if I detect a scent that I haven't smelled for decades even, and then I encounter that scent, it like brings me back to the point of time where I first encountered that smell. Is that related to what you're trying to communicate here?
Yeah, very much so.
But I look at it as more of a memory thing rather than a learning thing. But.
Yeah, but when you first smelled that, whether you meant to or not, you learned it, right? And so you think about, like for me, when I was back in high school, believe it or not, pot was not legal and I did it anyway. I wasn't around it again for years and years, but like, I don't know, 2 decades later, maybe, I'm just walking down the street and I get this whiff and I'm like, pot. I know exactly what it is, but I learned when I was doing it. You get the same thing with chemistry. If you've ever smelled 1,4-dihydrofuctoethanol, you will never forget it again because it stinks more than just about anything I've ever smelled. So, again, you're right. Smell is great. And so is taste. If there's like something you haven't eaten for decades. I had this experience of all things with those little candies called hot tamales. Used to eat them as a teenager and never ate them since. One day I got them in the store, popped one in my mouth, and I was back in Blythe, California, where I was a teenager, walking down the railroad tracks where I used to always walk while I ate them on the way home. It was one of the most vivid experiences I've ever had. If anybody has ever watched Ratatouille, the movie, when the food critic took a bite of that ratatouille and he was back in it with his mom serving him that. So yeah, smell and taste can both do that.
But I just wonder if that's really, that you're considering that a learning thing. I'm considering a memory thing, I guess. I'm looking at it more as a memory recall. But.
Yeah, and it is. It's if you're in, and your science, as I recall, is more electrical engineering, that sort of stuff. Am I right?
Mechanical engineering.
Okay, mechanical.
But we didn't taste bolts when I went to school. I was just wondering how it would apply. So that's a discipline where maybe it doesn't apply. But it smelled grease and oils and things like that, and I suppose that can bring back memories.
Right. And you might smell something that you've smelled before that you remember, oh, that's a bad thing. And you go looking for whatever, the oil leak or whatever it is. There is that in a way. But anybody else here, maybe from a discipline or something you picked up, what else can you learn with smell or taste?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's just get to this. Olfaction is precognition. It doesn't go through the cerebral cortex. It's processed at a subcortical level. So this is memory. Wait, the only way that that becomes memory is when it's associated with a memory and the first experience. That's why it's so strong. It's precognitive. Yes. You know that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, it is in one of the deeper centers. So, but you can take it and deliberately tie it to something. And a great idea is, if you are a cook, how often do you go down and make a little taste of it? But somewhere in the past, somebody said, this is the way to make spaghetti sauce. You tasted it, and after that, you're like, this doesn't taste right. If you get to be a good cook, then you start experimenting and you taste that. And you have an idea what happens if you add tarragon. So that's a way that you can associate it. See, it can be instant association, like you've smelled marijuana years ago, but you didn't mean to learn it. Or it can be tied to a cognition, which I think is what you said, right?
No, I'm saying the actual pathway is not through the neocortex.
You're right, but you can associate the two.
Yeah, eventually, but that's the way the memory is established. It's not initially through the neocortex. Okay?
Yep, okay. I got you.
Yep.
So, like I say, I'm just telling them, and I know when I took chemistry, they use that. They're like, we want you to taste saltpeter or to smell hydrochloric acid. Really easy to smell. So there are places where you can deliberately tie them. So you're right, it's processed down in the lower brain centers, but like anything in the lower brain center, you can tie it to something if you want to. All right, so I'm gonna move on to some ways to teach. I already mentioned lecture. It's my least favorite. Reason is retention from lecture. If somebody just sits there and tells you something, retention is miserable. It does depend on individuals, but generally speaking, it's about 10%. So it's horrid. If you read something, it's okay. At least you can reread something you missed, but it's still not the best way in the world. Then there's all these different ways that we've hit on: demonstrating, doing experiments, kind of hands-on, trial and error, great way to learn. Taste, so cooking, identifying chemicals, just put some things in there. Smell, cooking, fire detection. You could also learn what is burning. So there's a big difference between sulfur burning and wood burning. Hearing, great way to associate things. Anybody who's ever done music is familiar with that. Music, put it right there. Feeling things, woodworking, you learn how to feel a smooth surface or where it's not, so you can sand it. Hands-on, Conrad mentioned that earlier, it's terrific. Best way on earth, best way by far, is to teach others what you know. And that lets you go back through all those things that you may have used before and that you can help them with. Any of you who've ever taught something you know have probably discovered that it really makes you relearn it, reassociate it, learn how it works better than you knew before. And you make a lot of mistakes that teach you. And then asking questions, the Socratic method. If you just keep asking people questions like Socrates, if you've read his stuff, he just asks questions to keep leading people. And then if they get something wrong, he'll just kind of put a question to that tries to bring them back to the right line. It also teaches people to ask themselves questions so they can learn themselves later. So moving on to something a little different on teaching, I put ask what was taught earlier. This kind of works like little mini quizzes. So now you're not just leading, you're reviewing. But then this helps build something that connects information together like a spider web. This particular diagram, I can't remember what it came from, but I've seen one very like it in a educational piece. I had a minor in education, for those who don't know. So I've seen stuff like this, and you just take maybe all those blue points or something people know, so you connect everything they're going to learn from there, all the red stuff, to some blue points. Kind of gives an anchor. Again, this can be difficult with hybrid presentations. So if you can remind people of what's been taught earlier, I've had some, as you've seen, overlap with my slides. I like to do that where I can. And then one thing, if you ever teach something, you have handouts or pre-readings, try to link them prominently on any event announcements, hand them out to students if they're going to be in a classroom or something. If you tell people to read something ahead of time, that's their responsibility. If they show up and haven't read it, and obviously in academics, this is constant, but I kind of look at it with any presentation. If you expected to read something ahead of time and you don't, tough titty, Miss Kitty. You're going to be the one in trouble, not me. So moving from there, excuse me, to a little bit new on preparing a new presentation. So if you have any more on those points, you can pop in now. If you have any on this, just follow along. Preparing any new presentation, outlines. We all did it in school and we probably all hated it. But I found that unless you're going to teach something really simple, you pretty much need to outline. So like Conrad, probably if you were going to teach how to dismantle a carburetor, you probably wouldn't have to outline that. It's assuming you do carburetors. And then when you make your outline, make it as detailed as you want. When I've made outlines, they're usually way the hell too long, but that's okay. Because after that, you've thought about what you want to cover, how much you want to say, realize you can't. Oh, yeah, forgot. Put in any other ideas to what you're going to say, illustrations, hands-on if you've got it. Make sure you're content with all that that's in the outlines. And then when you're ready, write according to the outline. But don't change it unless there's something really wrong or important. Let's see. There, got it. Okay, so I should have put this a little earlier. For every point in the outline, you put as much information as you wish. That's what I was saying before. And then once you've done that, it's time to start whittling. You've got to get down to the minimum. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to teach it all within whatever time frame you have. Can't teach everything. And the one thing about whittling is you have to be merciless about it. I've made outlines when I used to work doing writing, and then somebody also look at it and they give it back to me, and there's all these big blocks and lines through saying, nope, don't need this, say less. And you're thinking, this is all brilliant. Why are you cutting it down? But you have to be merciless. And a little bit more about it, just constructing them. Once you figured out what you want to say and outlined what you want to say, put your presentation together in order, then there's an essential structure you want to put up. First, you want to tell everybody in your audience what you're going to say. So that's the introduction. That was kind of way back on my first slide. Then you're going to tell them what you're going to say. That's everything I'm doing now. I thought about putting blah, 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 but no. And then when you get to the end of it, you want to tell them what you just said. That little 3-point structure was given to me by a postdoc when I was in grad school. And I was trying to get my thesis together, and he told me this little secret. And it was just miraculous what it did for my presentation. I felt more comfortable. I got it across more smoothly. I didn't feel like I missed anything that much. So it works well. Now, I'm going to talk about PowerPoint, and I'm going to get out of this in a couple of slides. But first, I want to point out that it's one of the most powerful tools, extremely versatile for teaching all kinds of things, but it can't teach everything. And I put dance and woodworking as an illustration. You just really can't teach that with PowerPoint. You might be able to illustrate a technique, but you're going to have to show them hands-on, and they're going to have to do it. So PowerPoint has got an unbelievable number of tools, and unless you're a specialist, you'll never know them all. I sure as heck don't. But I have seen what the layout specialists in my old company used to do. It's amazing. If you want to get proficient at it, you do it the way I did. You learn some basics, you ask some folks who know more, and then you try, get lost, screw up, back up, try again, tell it not to save anything you just did, And of course, use the power of everybody's best friend, Control Z. Button combination we all wish we had in life. And then the last thing about it is if you're doing PowerPoint, don't overload a slide. You could make 2 or more simple slides rather than one busy, overcrowded one. But as you can see, this one got a little overloaded deliberately. That's, you know, I have actually seen people put slides like this together and there's absolutely no idea what the heck they said. So you're going to do PowerPoint, make 2 slides, simplify. If they have to look exactly the same, duplicate the slide and change the wording. So now I'm going to stay in here just a little bit longer and talk about getting a new presentation in PowerPoint. The first thing you want to do is click that thing called File. Again, you'll see the right up there, and then it's going to pop you to this. Now you're going to tell it you want a new presentation entirely, and then you've got all these different themes that you can select from. That's the one I'm going to be messing around with a little later. And then you can also go back, open things you've done before. So you can see I had open. Those are things I've done recently. Like I could close this and come right back to it this way. And then save a copy. Want to use that later on, you can do it as save as, but at this point when you've made something new, you've got to give it a name. You could go through and try to make it all, but then you run the chance of losing it before you save it. Print, we all know what that is. There's your save or save as that pop out later once you've saved the initial presentation. Okay, here's where I hop out for a minute. Trying to figure out where I put that other slide. Set. Okay, so now, like I said, I didn't want to have to just go through and show you a bunch of stuff. I actually wanted to be able to mess around with it a little bit and show you what you could do. Before I get to all this, I just want to know if there's any more questions up until this point, things to go over again or comments.
Doesn't look so from the meeting room here.
Oh, I must be conveying everything perfectly. Okay, so I went through this, you know, making a new presentation. You can select these guys over here, select a new theme for all of these. And in the particular case of this one, that was the theme I happened to select so I could mess around with it. And then once you're into this, this is your home screen. If you select a theme, it's going to give you all these different slides that fit with the theme. You can make others and modify them to fit with the theme as well. But at this point, you're at the what they call the home screen. This is where you get to do everything. You can see all these things here, and I'm just gonna, you all know undo, copy, paste, and yeah, copy, paste those. Making a new slide, if I'm gonna put one, say, right there in between those two, make a new slide, pick what kind it is, or these are all for change slide or set up section breaks. We all know fonts and stuff. We all probably know the different bullet points and numbered points. And these are from, you know, taking a bullet point to a higher level or a lower level. So let me just mess with this. Put a break in, get back here. I didn't do that. Okay, I got all that. Simple bullet points, numbered points, and then these, like say, I'll move them in deeper or not. This is all for how does it align? Most of you know that. Inserting shapes. There's a gazillion of them, and you can do actually some pretty cool stuff with these shapes. And I'll get back to them a little later. You can arrange objects. You can, you know, again, you're probably familiar with this, where you put them, how you group them. Styles. You want everything in that thing to look orange. Those are easy to use. This is, of course, Phil.
Hey, Mike. I don't think you're sharing the right screen, maybe. Should stuff be moving around?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see. Where is it? Stop that.
Or maybe not sharing the full screen?
Our screen sharing, but let me just do this for a minute.
You got multiple screens open on your desktop. You gotta pick the right one.
Now can you see it? The one with the
Yeah.
little stars over here? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you want to go back up.
Yeah, I can go back for just a minute. So let's see. Again, most of you know a lot of these things. Do and undo. You can also use Control-Y or Control-X. Pasting anything in. You may have a picture or words you want to paste. Copy paste, making a new slide if I want to put a new one in. These are a whole bunch of slides and they're all formatted in whatever type of slide presentation format I selected to start with. So you can see that one looks like that. If I say new slide, it's going to give me that color and format. I can also change this particular slide to a new layout or format within that, that type. This is all your font controls. I certainly think everybody's familiar with those. Let me try something here. There we go. Very quickly, bullet points, how to align things within there, turning from bullet points, that indenting further. Usually when you do that, the bullet points change. Let's see if it'll do it for me. Nope, it's not set up for it. And then there's other controls here who work for things like sorting stuff out into order, changing the direction of the font. It's all stuff I mess with it. It's all pretty intuitive. The one I was getting to earlier is this, shapes. All of these shapes are pretty cool for using. Some of them, like let's say this one right here, will actually give you strange bent lines as you go along trying to connect them. So you can get all kinds of weird stuff with those shapes that you put in. Arranging the slides, whether you want to bring an object in here, bring it to the front, send it to the back. You can group objects, all pretty intuitive. This is kind of fun. If you don't like your plain old colors, you have lots of options that you can go through. Then, of course, we all know fill, outline, erase. Find replace is something I use a lot because what I can do is if I have something I put in there that I don't want any incident of it, or if I want to change the way it looks, I can use this to find any and all incidents of the word type. Highlighted it right there. Find next, didn't find any. And then the other thing that's fun is when you use it with the replace function. Everywhere I put the word type, I want to change it to the word up. And then find next, do you want to change that? Let's see, where did it go? Replace. So I just replaced it. Any place I saw type, I just replaced it with up. This is really useful for editing or rapid changes when you're done. Unless you dictate, I have not used that in PowerPoint, but it can be very handy if you just want to talk what you want to say in, which I often find easier. And I'm going to get back to the design in a minute. Insert. Going to go quickly through this one. Let's see. Did I have one in here? Nope. Okay. So you can insert. You put in a new slide. There are tables you can make, pictures you can add. There are ways to create graphs. There's a table that I inserted right off of here. When you put in things like graphs, what I like is you can make it here, or if you like better graphs, you go to Excel, make them, and then import them straight into here. And it'll ask you if you want to do that. you may get some changes in format. So if that bothers you, you'll have to play with it again.
So when you do that, Mike, does it
Yeah.
keeps the link to Excel, right? So
It
that
keeps the what?
does it keep the link to the Excel program on the?
Yeah, what it'll do is if you tell it import Excel graph, it'll yank it straight out of the Excel program you just did it in, and it should come up just the way you did it. Occasionally, you'd always have to wash it because sometimes it may do something to your formatting. So you have to check for that. If you're going to import a static graph, one that's not going to change while you're here, and it keeps changing your format, you can't get it to change back or not do that, you can always go grab your graph over in Excel and just copy the whole thing and then paste it here using, let me see if I can get back to paste here.
If you created a PowerPoint presentation on one PC and then you presented it on another laptop or something that didn't have Excel on it, what would happen? Would you just get the static view of how it was last saved in Excel?
That is a good question. I am not 100% sure. I think so. And again, if you don't have to change the graph within PowerPoint, if like this is the way you want the graph to be, and it looks that way in Excel, but you have trouble with it here or in another computer, just grab it from Excel as a picture, or rather copy the whole thing and then paste it as a picture over here.
Right.
You can also use a screen capture tool if you have that. And then you can just paste it directly as a picture. Yeah, good question.
Or you could save it as a PDF too, probably.
Yes, yep, you could save it as a PDF. It should work. I find that I like them as pictures. I've done PDFs and they work okay. But I generally just like to paste things in as pictures. I feel like it's something I feel like I can play with a little better, but go ahead, put a PDF in there if you like it and go ahead and play with it. Okay, so pictures, you can take them from this device or you can go to stock images or online images. For those, you have to be connected to the internet. So I want to get all these cool online pictures, start posting them in. I can select almost anything I want. See, is it coming up? Doesn't matter. Anyway, I can pull up just about any picture I want, copy, paste it into where I want it here. Can also make screenshots of what you've got. And there are photo albums you can create, so you can go back and yank things you've already had. And then again, I mentioned you can insert shapes. Once it's in there, you can change the fill to, let's say, white and that to pink. And it's not thick enough, so that's also in here. So there's lots of things you can do with this. You can also get shape effects, which will do things like make the whole thing glow. A lot of things you can mess around with, and this is another one of those things that fits under the category of mess around with it. And you can see there's all sorts of things. You can set up a chart here, like the one I've just done, or I could change that thing to something completely different. And if you do change it, you probably have to play with the labels and stuff again. But I've done it. It works pretty well. It's pretty intuitive. Oops, now this thing wants me to go ahead and do it. Stuck in here. Okay, so I just pasted that in without meaning to. There. So again, and a lot of this stuff I'm talking about is stuff that you just mess around with. You can put all kinds of links in here, whether they're URL links, links to create zooms out of the slides. Comments are great for when you want to label something or say something like, you know, this graph is not in its final form. You could type that in here. not finding, whatever. And then I can come back and find those whenever I'm ready. And you'll see later, you'll see a thing where it'll say show all comments. If you don't have it right there, you basically go up to the appropriate thing up here. There's your comments, and it'll throw them right here. So there's a lot of stuff, like I said, that's very intuitive, but at the same time, pretty handy. And this, put that in so that I can mess with this. That's putting a shape in. I can quick style it if I want. Let's see, still in insert. And then if I want it to look really fancy, I've got all sorts of things like this I can do. Whoops, come here. So I didn't like this the way I had it. Oh, darn, I hate when it does that. Okay.
How about inserting video? Does that work at all in this stuff? Yeah, I used to try to do that back in my career, and it was very flaky. Sometimes it would work, and sometimes it wouldn't. And when you save the PowerPoint, is the video saved with PowerPoint file? Remain an external link?
Yeah, and this is one of those things you have to muck about with, because there are different types of videos, and the program may, it may hiccup at one type or another. I do know that there's some things, and I can't remember how to do it. Tom would know how to do this, but when you insert a video that is maybe a snippet out of something on YouTube, sometimes it won't play, and there's a way to format that I can't remember. And it's like I said, I don't know everything on there. There's so much stuff on here. But yes, you can definitely insert a video, maybe one you saved here, go online and find the YouTube one you were looking at earlier. I did it in one earlier presentation, but I did have to, Tom had to show me how to format it so that it would actually work. And again, I don't remember how, but it's in Tom's head.
So it's still not robust, is what you're saying?
Again, I haven't used it very much. But yeah, if I were you and you wanted to do it, play with it. Set it up, put the video in, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then you always go to one of the other magical functions that everybody has called help. And, you can get your help here. Sometimes it'll throw you to Microsoft Online things. You can go to online forums, and you'll usually find somebody who said, I'm putting in this video, but it won't play. And then that's a great place. And that's where I've learned a considerable amount of messing with this program is I'll do it, I'll mess with it, the damn thing won't work. And if I can find somebody, great. If I can't, search the help, go online, and eventually you can almost always find it. So this is another case of that, like everything else you tend to learn in a program, mess around with a little bit. And if you can't figure it out, go get somebody. Okay. So one last thing you can insert. This be particularly useful for engineers, where you can insert things that you want. Pythagorean theorem, we've all mainly heard of, quadratic formula. Once you get down here to trigonometric identity, I don't have any use for that since calculus, and that's been years. Also, a text box, back to insert. If you have some unusual symbol that you're searching for, this is it. There's all sorts of things. There's the cent, 1 cent emblem that we often don't find. I can insert that. You see it just popped up in there. I can insert foreign letters, all sorts of little things that you need. If you like those wingdings and you want something from there, let's see, just search through the various fonts and collections, and eventually you get down to things like wingdings, if you like them. There's a lot of stuff. And that one's so big, you basically got to mess with it and find out what all is there. So Conrad, you asked about videos. You just have to work with that and, search help if it isn't working for you. Same thing with audio. You can record it. You can pull something up and put it on there. Most of the time, this one works pretty well. But like all things that are designed by man, it will screw up periodically, and you just have to mess with it. And a screen recording I have never used. Supposedly, you can record just like what we're doing now, face to face, and then put the recording into your PowerPoint. This is one that I actually sort of messed with more recently. I wasn't doing it much. And one of the things I had fun, if you saw my cognitive dissonance thing, was I created a lot of animations of lines running around. That's this guy. I make these lines and then I come back and tell it to replay it. And it did it too fast, but watch. Okay, came back real fast. I can slow that down. I can make these lines thicker. There's a few things I can do with animating it, but what's fun is when I did that cognitive dissonance one, I would put these into some of the brain diagrams and I could show how circuits or how neural circuits would flow around the brain. That's just one thing you can do with it. I'm sure you can use your imagination and come up with all sorts of crazy ideas. And you can see over here that you can erase what you just did, a part of it. I don't like that. Different colored pens. And yes, they do have a highlighted function you can use. So I want everybody to notice the word chart. Pretty much just like any one. And there is draw with a touch. I'm using my finger now, if you couldn't see that. The ruler function I hate because it comes in at 45 and I've never figured out how to get it out of there. Anybody wants to mess with that and teach me, I'm open. The ink to text function is kind of fun because if you have something you want to draw with like that for some reason, and then later you decide, you know what, that really should be like, should be able to turn that into, and it won't let me, second there. Okay, had to use the select function. So now you can see it tried, but it can't read what I actually said. I was using it not too long ago and it was working brilliantly. Okay. Okay, you can see it turned it into basically a euro symbol. You can turn it the other way, and you can also draw formulas that don't exist in that formula insert. I'm going to get to something that's fun. These are all different ways, as you can see, that I can reformat this slide. So I wasn't happy with what I have. This shows things much better, so I can click over to that. Do note, however, that all the slides over here that are in your smaller slideshow thing, they all just switched as well. So if you do that, you don't like it, thank heavens for Control-Z, but it does give you a lot of options. You can mess around with the size of things you're showing. You can format the background so that I don't have to change everything. I can turn it into, that'll only do one slide, which I'm glad for. Again, lots of possible functions. And I'm going to go ahead and mess with the design idea a little bit. Going to a different slide. You see this design ideas thing over here. Oops, come on. I love this thing because you can just kind of put your stuff. So it's just not going to let me mess with it, is it? But there, I don't like the way this looked, so I'm going to change it to that. Unfortunately, it didn't pick up the pictures of the people, but ordinarily I do something like that. Let me see if I can mess one up a little bit here. Insert pictures. Okay, now I go to design idea. Those are just a mess right now, but that, and look, it took all those pictures I threw in there and put them in a nice format. If I don't like that, go through and grab any one of these. These are fantastic because I'm not particularly brilliant at finding beautiful new ways to lay out a slide, but I can go to something like this and make a slide that looks awesome. And yes, I do that with the presentations I've done before. I like to cheat and make things look good. So draw, design, basically change the slide types. You can format parts of the slide, and the design idea thing pops up in a lot of places. It's there. I just went under home. Let's see. And now it's here in design. It'll show up in a couple of different places. Like just look over there. If it's not there, take your slide, go back to some place where it is and click design ideas, and suddenly it comes up with stuff that makes you look like you're an amazing layout specialist. So again, that's one of my favorites because you can make things look so cool. Transitions. This is another one that I only recently kind of messed around with. Excuse me. That I kind of messed around with enough to enjoy. But this is, whoops, come on, you. If I'm doing, where's my slideshow? Got this, I go along. Notice I didn't just change, it came in more slowly. There are some other functions that you can have. There's one I really liked and I can't find it now, but it was one that basically works as a curtain. There it is. So now, I think I got it. Oops, sorry, doing the wrong thing. There. Now, if we go to the next slide, it comes down like that. So if you want to make your transitions from one slide to another look really cool, that's another way to do it. You can change which way it comes. You can also put in sound when this thing transitions. Again, I've never used them, but what the heck, let's find out. There we go. I don't know, do y'all hear that cash register sound? And you can also, you did? Good. So you can see, and again, I just saw that, messed with it. Hey, I discovered something. And then you can change how the slides advance, because sometimes when you're doing transitions, you don't want them to just jump from one to another. So, come back to that in just a minute, because it is fun. Slideshow, this is mostly just to actually show the slideshow from the beginning or the current slide. You can customize it a little differently. Rehearsing is fun because you can go through the presentation your very own self. You can talk to it. You can time how long you're on each slide. You can make sure that all your animations and transitions show up right. And if you don't like this slide, you can leave it in there, but now it just doesn't show up anymore when you do the presentation. Okay. Rehearse timings, that's its own timing thing. It can go along with the rehearsal. The rest of it, again, I think it's pretty self-evident, except over here that you can set up subtitles. That's another thing I have not done, but it would be a cool function. Last sort of little stuff here, your review. This is where you get your spell checker, show our comments. There's a lot of functions this thing has in it. So again, this is more, you're done with it and you just want to go through and do a lot of checking to make sure that you haven't done something that doesn't work. View, again, this is just one of those things that most people don't use very much. You can change the color of the slide. So, hey, I want to view it in black and white. Or you can go back. Go. Zoom is kind of fun if you like really need to see where it says Walt Disney and you need to zoom in on it for some reason. Zoom. I want to zoom into that 100%. Oh, sorry, did it over there. Okay. Now I'm on the slide. All of a sudden I can see it much closer, and you don't have to figure out how to get back to where you were. You just do that. If I can get this silly thing, go back. There. Some things I'll point out while I'm here. Some of you may notice this ruler thing up here. That is a great way to format your text really fast. Just, you know where you want it, you just move it. You could do something like it down here, but mostly this is just for, let me, hang on, just, there it is. This is not easy to see. Let me try the zoom function and see if it helps. Oh, easier up here. Okay, I don't think it's showing up very well. But this thing, it says grid lines and guides. What they should normally do, and I don't know why I can't see them, is they should bring up some lines along here to help you line things up. There's also a function in here, snap objects to grids. So if you set up the guidelines and grid lines, and then you've got to move something like this, it won't work right now. But what it'll do is it'll take the closest guideline you get to and snap it into that. So you don't have to sit here and eyeball it. Whoops. Okay, that's all your view functions. Again, it's relatively straightforward. I mentioned the help functions. We all know what that is. Oh my God, I don't know what happened. And the last couple things is the shape format. You can change all sorts of things about this particular shape I'm in. If I want to change that, oh, come on. Oh, it doesn't interpret that as shape, but it'll let me play with the table design. If I didn't like it, change it to that. I can shade things, different colors. There's a lot of stuff. And this is another one of those that fits under the heading of mess around with it. There, where did it go? It's quick styles. There it go. Now I can't find it. Anyway, quick styles. I like it to look like that. And somewhere in here, it's supposed to be a thing that lets you basically change the way it looks and turn it into word art. Probably would just go back to the, where'd it go? Can't find the word art. This is another thing that happens to me. You know, I get lost and I can't figure out where something is. So I do that a lot. I forget where various functions are. It doesn't matter. You just start clicking through things until you find it. And layout. Again, you probably all figure what this is. I can set the cell margins or the slide margins so that if I really want a very narrow slide or a slide that lets me get way out to the edge, I can change that. I don't think there's really anything in here that isn't partially intuitive, except for things like that. Inserting slides, I can delete them. Let's see, it's not letting me have the grid lines still. So I think part of the point is here, I've been messing with this, and you can see I don't know everything that's in here. Just, I don't know everything that's in here. I can, you know, I still get stuff in here and I start mucking about with it and wind up finding new things.
Well, Mike, I think you covered it well enough. I think we should move on.
Okay, the one thing that I will move on to then, I'm going to go here. This is the animations. This is something I use a lot. And it's fun. This is where I get to do things like set up a slide and have things come flying in from the sides. You can also, oops, sorry. That's not what I wanted. There. You also get a lot more effects. So if you want something to disappear at some point, these are all here. And then last thing with animations that's good is every time I put something new in here, it'll add it and put it over in this pane. This is really useful because I can make things start together. I can make them change how they come in. I can change the timing. That's how I get a lot of those presentations for those who've seen mine where things come flying in or fading in. This is one of those things, the animation thing that I've messed around with the most. I found it probably the hardest thing to learn. So this is probably the most powerful function in here.